Hi everyone, welcome to our class today. Our topic is non-compositional meaning and we'll be focusing on anomalies and metaphors. So throughout the semester we've been discussing two subfields of semantics, which are lexical semantics and sentential semantics. Our topic today falls under sentential semantics. So we previously discussed truth conditional semantics in sentences that follow compositional rules of semantics. That is, sentences that are meaningful on their own or with relation or in relation to other sentences. Today we're going to discuss non-compositional meaning, so sentences that seem at first sight to be meaningless or to be nonsensical. So we have three different types that fall under compositional meaning or non-compositional semantics, which are anomalies, metaphors, and idioms. In this video, we'll be discussing anomalies and metaphors, and we'll be discussing idioms in another separate video. So what is non-compositional meaning? So the meaning of an expression is not always obvious, even to a native speaker of the language. And by the way, you can think of an example of an expression that doesn't have any meaning in your own native language. So meanings may be obscured in many ways, or at least may require some imagination or maybe special knowledge to be apprehended. So previously we saw that semantic rules compute sentence meaning compositionally based on the meanings of words and the syntactic structure that contains them. So we discussed in a previous video tautologies, contradictions, and propositions and truth conditions of sentences. There are, however, interesting cases in which compositionality breaks down, either because there is a problem with words or with the semantic rules. If one or more words in a sentence do not have a meaning, then obviously we will not be able to compute a meaning for the entire sentence. Moreover, if the individual words have meaning but cannot be combined together as required by the syntactic structure and related semantic rules, we will also not get to a meaning. We refer to these situations as semantic anomaly. So alternatively, it might require a lot of creativity and imagination on our part as speakers of a language to derive a meaning. This is what happens in metaphors. Finally, some expressions, which are called idioms, have a fixed meaning, that is, a meaning that is not compositional. So basically, applying compositional rules to idioms gives rise to funny or perhaps inappropriate meanings. So now let's discuss anomaly in details. So the semantic properties of words determine what other words they can be combined with. Let's consider the following sentence. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. So the sentence obeys all the syntactic rules of English. The subject is colorless green ideas and the predicate is sleep furiously. So the sentence obviously has a subject and a predicate. It has the same syntactic structure as a sentence like dark green leaves rustle furiously. But there is obviously something semantically wrong or odd with the sentence. The meaning of colorless includes the semantic feature without color, but it is combined with the adjective green, which has the feature green in color. So how can something be both without color and green in color? Of course, this is an example of semantic violations, which is in this fact the sentence is semantically anomalous. So other English sentences make no sense at all because they include words that have no meaning. They are uninterpretable. They can be interpreted only if some meaning for each nonsense word can be dreamt up. So semantic violations in poetry, for example, may form strange but interesting aesthetic images, as in Dylan Thomas' phrase, for example, a grieve, a go. A go is ordinarily used with words specified by some temporal semantic feature. For example, a week ago, but not a table ago. An hour ago, but not a dream ago. A month ago, but not a mother ago. Or a century ago. So when Thomas used the word grief with ago, he was adding a durational feature to grief for poetic effect. So while the noun phrase is anomalous, it evokes certain feelings and it may be meaningful to some of the readers. So though all of these phrases violate some semantic rules, we can understand them as speakers of the language. So breaking the rules creates the imagery desired. The fact that we are able to understand or at least interpret anomalous expressions and at the same time recognize their anomalous nature demonstrates our knowledge of the semantic system and semantic properties of the language. That is to say, part of our knowledge of a language is us being able to determine or to identify that some sentences are meaningless or anomalous, but we can still understand or maybe interpret them, or at least identify or decide or determine that they are meaningless. So now we move to our discussion of metaphors. So what are metaphors? So a metaphor is a non-literal suggestive meaning in which an expression that designates one thing is used implicitly to mean something else. Let's consider the metaphor in this sentence. The night has 1,000 eyes. So what do you think this sentence means or refers to? This sentence means that one may be unknowingly observed at night. A metaphor can also be defined as an incomplete simile. Consider the sentence, she is a rose. In this metaphor, there is an incomplete simile because originally what we want to say is that she is as pretty as a rose, but we just say she is a rose. So metaphorical use of language is in fact language creativity at its highest. So let's move on to discuss types of metaphors. The first type of metaphors has to do with body parts. So body parts that are used to name the parts of other entities, like for example, the heart of a problem or the neck of a bottle. The second type has to do with transfer of terms from physical domain to the mental domain. An example would be grasp a point or get the joke. The third type of metaphors has to do with using animal terms to denote human being held in low esteem, like describing a person as a wolf or a snake. We can find the same. Now, can you think of examples from Arabic that correspond to these different types of metaphors? Let's discuss some examples together. So for metaphors that contain body parts to name the parts of other entities, can you think of any examples? For example, في قلب الحدث or عنق الزجاجة. For metaphors that contain or that include transfer of terms from physical domain to the mental domain, there is the example يصارع الزمن. Can you think of other examples? As for the third type, which includes animal terms to denote human being held in low esteem, can you think of any common examples? We can think of ذئب بشري or ثور هائج or حية. We all use these terms either in standard or colloquial Arabic, to describe people held in low esteem. Can you think of any other examples? So let's move to discuss how metaphors are interpreted by speakers of a language. So how can speakers of a language interpret a metaphor? Metaphors form part of our way of thinking or of understanding the world. So to interpret a metaphor, we need to understand the individual words, 2, the literal meaning of the whole expression, and 3, facts about the world. So to interpret a metaphor, we need to understand the individual words of the metaphor itself, the literal meaning of the whole expression, and then some facts about the world. That is to say, some non-linguistic information or background is needed for us to be able to decipher or understand a metaphor. Can you think of any popular metaphors in our everyday life? Here's one for you. Time is money. So we could say that someone is wasting their time. We could say that some gadget will save us hours. We can ask someone, how do they spend their time? Or we could say that something cost us an hour, or that we have invested a lot of time in something. So time, which is an abstract concept, is the subject of multiple metaphors. So we save time, we waste time, we manage time, push things back in time, live on borrowed time, or maybe suffer the ravages of time as the sands of time drift away. So in effect, the metaphors take the abstract concept of time and treat it as a concrete object of value. So for the metaphor, time is money. For us to understand this metaphor, it's necessary to know the concept of work, how the concept of work has developed in modern Western culture, so that employees are often paid according to the number of hours or days they work. So time in our culture has become a valuable commodity. It's a limited resource that we use to accomplish our goals. So in our culture, time is money in many ways. For example, telephone message units, hourly wages, interests on loans. So these practices have arisen in modern industrialized societies and structure our basic everyday activities in a very profound way. Another metaphor is argument is war. So parties go into battle about how high to push the bar for skills. You have to learn how to defend yourself against stupid arguments. He attacked every weak point in my argument. His criticisms were right on target. I have never won an argument with him. So as you can see, all these expressions are based on the metaphor argument is war. So we can actually think of arguments as something that we could win or lose. We see the person we are arguing with as an opponent, and we attack his positions and we defend our own. We gain and lose ground in an argument. So though there is no physical battle, there is a verbal battle. And the structure of an argument to attack or to defend or to counterattack reflects this. In this sense, argument is war. The argument is war structures the actions we perform. So let's move on to discuss dead metaphors. So a dead metaphor occurs when the image that the metaphor invokes has been established in the language and is therefore typically not perceived as a metaphor anymore. For example, when we say, I cannot grasp the idea. Now this expression was originally a metaphor, but because it has been established in the language, we no longer acknowledge this expression as a metaphor. Therefore, it's considered a dead metaphor. Another example is the fall of the dollar. we think of it as now being contained in the lexicon, whether real or mental lexicon. So at times, a metaphor lexicalizes, that is, it becomes very common, and we're not aware that we're using a metaphor. Like, for example, life is not a bed of roses. This is opposed to creative situational metaphor, which requires some active resolution to understand. So just to sum up what a metaphor is, we could say that the essence of metaphors is understanding and experiencing one kind of thing in terms of another. Now, metaphors are commonly found in ads, like the one we have here. Of course, the metaphor is in how have your savings grown? So one's savings or money is compared to a plant or a tree that one grows. Let's check together some metaphors or some visual metaphors in ads. So for example here, cigarettes are compared to bullets in a gun. Now in this ad, the sauce looks like an extinguisher to showcase how hot it is. In this ad, which addresses the problem of global warming, the Earth is compared to a melting ice cream cone. In this ad, the energy drink Red Bull is compared to batteries, in that it gives energy. In this ad, treating oneself without consulting a doctor is compared to taking bullets. So basically, it's very dangerous and may lead to someone losing their lives. So to sum up, today we discussed two aspects of non-compositional meaning. These are anomalies and metaphors. An anomaly is a violation of semantic rules resulting in expressions that seem nonsensical or maybe meaningless, whereas a metaphor refers to a non-literal suggestive meaning in which an expression that designates one thing is used implicitly to mean something else. In our next class, we will be discussing idioms in details. Here are the references I used to prepare the materials for our video. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye.